Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the, third night of the third week of our candidate forums from the League of Women Voters of St. Lucie County of the 2020 election season. I am Andy Poley. I am the current president of your local League of Women Voters. I have a few quick announcements and little notes of information before we get started. Mail-in ballots went out on September 25th. If you've already requested your mail-in ballot, you've probably already received it. You can still request it through October 24th, but we do suggest that if you're going to do that, please do it as soon as possible. There's going to be a lot of them, and it's a lot of mail, and we just want to make sure you get it and you have time to get it back. It must be received by the Supervisor of Elections office by Election Day at 7 p.m. If you don't want to mail it back, that's fine. There are secure drop-off boxes all over the county. You can visit the supervisor's website to find out where they are. Early voting starts October 19th. There are 5 locations, same 5 locations that were available to all of the St. Lucie County voters in the primary election. All voters in this county can vote at any one of those locations. And then election day itself is November 3rd. If you choose to vote on election day, you have to vote at your assigned precinct. If you don't know where that is, that's fine. Just visit the Supervisor of Elections website to find that location. To learn more about the candidates you're going to hear from tonight and all of the candidates on your ballot, please visit vote411.org. It's a nifty little website. You put in your address and it only gives you the candidates that are on your ballot. So you don't have to sift through all the other candidates from all the other parties. You just get to hear from the candidates that you're going to have to vote on. You can also learn about the 6 amendments that are going to appear on your ballot as well, or you can learn about them from us. We have live to the public meetings that you can sign up for by visiting our website. So tonight, we're going to hear from candidates running for Florida State Senate, District 25. It is our only Senate race this year. The format for tonight's forum is the same as our other forums, 90-second introductions and then a series of questions. If we have time after that series of questions and you as viewers have posted questions, we may just be able to pose those to the candidates on your behalf. As we reach the end of our time, we'll need to move on to closing statements, which are 2 minutes for each candidate. Did I say that they get 2 minutes to answer the questions? They get 2 minutes to answer the questions as well. It does alternate back and forth, and the order of answering was determined by coin toss a little bit earlier. This is not a debate, this is a forum. So the candidates will make their statements or answer their questions, and then we will just move on to the next question or candidate. They do not invoke here. Candidates will be alerted at 30 seconds remaining in their time and when their time has expired. So our moderator this evening is, as always, the lovely Carol Wyatt. Carol is the co-owner and operator of radio stations WPSL in Port St. Lucie, WSTU in Stewart, and WJNX in Fort Pierce. She is the president of the WPSL Christmas Kids of St. Lucie County, past president of the Rotary Club of Port St. Lucie, and a current member of the Port St. Lucie Businesswomen. She has lots of years in broadcasting, including time as a reporter in Los Angeles prior to moving here to Florida in 1993. We are, as always, honored to have her as our moderator. And so now I'm going to kick it over to Carol.
Well, thank you, Andy, and welcome to the League of Women Voters of St. Lucie County Candidate Forum. We thank the members of the League for developing our questions for this evening. We thank our candidates for participating, and we thank you for watching and informing yourselves about the general election in what is still a challenging year. Tonight, Florida State Senate District 25. It is for a term of 4 years. It's representing a district that includes St. Lucie County, Martin County, and a portion of northern Palm Beach County. The candidates, the incumbent, Gail Harrell, Republican, and the challenger, Karina Balderramos Robinson, the Democrat. We will begin with opening statements, and by a predetermined coin toss, Gail Harrell will begin.
Thank you very much, and I wanted to say thank you to the League for doing this. You are an amazing group. And also thank you for the wonderful celebration you did for the 100th anniversary of a woman's right to vote. That was so significant, and I so enjoyed participating in your marvelous celebration. And as I said then, we've come a long way, baby, but we still have a ways to go. I'm Gail Harrell, and I'm running for re-election to Senate District 25. I had the honor and privilege of serving you as a state representative in District 83, and with redistricting, it had been 81. But I so appreciate the opportunity to serve you. I'm a longtime resident of the Treasure Coast. I've been here for 49 years. My goodness, where does time go when you're having fun? And raised my family here. I have 4 wonderful children. My husband was an OBGYN in the area, and I ran his practice for many, many years. He delivered over 4,000 babies. Some of you may be among those babies that he delivered. But I taught in our public schools. In fact, I taught Spanish in our public schools. And I've been a long-term volunteer in our community, from helping people to succeed, the Big Brothers Big Sisters of St. Lucie County. I'm a founding board member of Hibiscus Children's Center. Service to our community is who I am and what I do.
Okay, thank you. Opening statement, Ms. Robinson.
Thank you so much, Andy and Carol, and the League's membership for hosting this especially important candidate forum. As a former chair for the Speakers Bureau in Palm Beach County, I deeply admire your personal commitment to help educate and inform the voters year after year. Additionally, I thank Senator Gail Harrell for joining us this evening and recognizing the celebration of our 100th anniversary. This election is pivotal to securing a safe environment for our families and our economy. I joined the U.S. Army straight out of high school and have been never wavered in protecting our nation in harm's way to serve also in combat. I've not lived in Florida my whole life, but I've always cherished the opportunities to direct legislative affairs abroad and on Capitol Hill. And along the way, I raised 3 handsome boys who reside here in Southeast Florida as well. It's for them and our future generations that I entered this race. The heart of our democracy is at stake, and bold leadership and bipartisan work is much required. As your next state senator, I will continue working across the aisle with stakeholders from the local to the federal level while staying true to our constituents. My vote will not be bought or influenced. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will begin the questions with Gail Harrell. After that, we'll rotate who has first on each question. So for Gail Harrell, both political parties have expressed concern for the impact of the presidential election on down ballot races. This is not a new phenomenon, but this election is not like any other. In this hyper-partisan environment, regardless of your position, how do you convince voters to cross party lines and vote for you?
Here again, I think it's when people know who you are, when you have worked with them for so many years, people trust you. And I think that makes a huge difference. I get a huge number of crossover votes. People know me, they know what I'm going to do. They believe in what I am doing. I think that is a key issue. In this hyper-partisan national race, it makes it so difficult for us here in our community. And that's where having relationships makes a big difference. I've been part of so many different organizations, have worked with all our local officials in the area, in all the counties in this area. And I think people have looked at my record, and I ask them to do that. And they know who I am. They know where I stand. I make things very clear. And I'm a door-to-door person. I knock on doors. I can't tell you how many doors I've knocked on over the many years. And those red running shoes are an essential part of getting to know people and making sure they know who you are, what you stand for. You say what you're going to do, and then you do what you said you would do. And people, I think that's how you have to communicate. In this time of COVID, it becomes very difficult, very difficult. So we've been reaching out to various people in the community. We've done a lot of Zoom meetings. This is not the first, and it makes it really difficult. But we've been communicating with people, letting them know that I work in a very bipartisan way across the aisle. I've sponsored many bills with various colleagues from the other party, and I work towards solving problems, not in a partisan way, but really addressing issues and how you solve problems. I work with people, and I am very much a part of this community, and people know who I am and trust me.
Okay, thank you. For Ms. Robinson, same question. How do you convince voters to cross party lines and vote for you?
Well, just as I did many years ago, I ran a former congressional race in South Dakota, a place where I was born and raised. And I was gone 30 years. And at the time where I was directing at the Pentagon, that salary paid my boys' college tuition. And I gave it up to go back home and run in a very heavy red district. But what they saw in me was a patriot, somebody who have served our nation, who didn't necessarily talk the party line, that I've worked hard for our country, and garnered 34% of the votes in 14 months. So just as Gail mentioned, boots on the ground, knocking on doors, and speaking to hundreds of people is just the way to do it. And we are constrained here during the pandemic. However, since I've announced in this race across all 3 counties, every day I'm walking the turf with my grassroots team. It's like being forward deployed overseas where I'm working 7 days a week. But I listen very carefully to the heartfelt concerns and comfort people with a promise of plausible resolution. And even amid this pandemic, I've attended city council meetings where we were debating whether or not everyone should be wearing masks, including in Stewart. And I just felt so overwhelmed that the people's voice needed to be heard, and I was there to listen. I visited numerous churches, veterans' homes, small businesses, and made thousands of calls to check on folks. Of course, I'm hoping to garner their vote, but truly in my heart, I care about the welfare for them and their families.
Okay, well, thank you. The next question comes back to Karina Robinson. Florida Home Rule allows local governments to pass ordinances and regulations that are appropriate for their specific location and citizens. Home rule is often preempted by state legislation in regards to sanctuary cities, plastics, firearms, environmental protections, and education. What is your position on Florida home rule and why?
Well, I support a local government being able to fully manage in their best interests without a lot of unwarranted state oversight. You mentioned several examples, the having weapons or not, or using plastic straws or not in the sanctuary cities. It is disheartening sometimes when local leaders want to be able to govern and do what's in the best interest of their constituents, but they are constrained. Learning as I've been traveling, the Florida Association of Counties, which represents 67 counties across Florida, has made the stop and overreach one of its 5 main priorities and in this upcoming session. And the Florida League of Cities is very involved. The organization is representing more than 400 cities, towns, and villages in our Sunshine State. And they've identified 12 bills filed in the upcoming session that would preempt local issues and regulations, handing over authority to the state. So this is very important, especially during this election.
Okay, same question to Gail Harold. What is your position on Florida home rule and why?
Thank you very much. And I believe in home rule. It's absolutely essential. Miami is not Port St. Lucie. It's not Fort Pierce. We have very different communities across the state. We go from very rural communities to very, very metropolitan areas such as Miami, Broward County, Tampa, very, very different areas. So home rule is very, very important. It's a core principle. There are needs though to have state regulation on many, many things, and you have to balance that. For instance, you can't have different child molestation laws in different parts of the state. You want to have things, you have to have overall rule and law across the state on many, many things, but so much can be done locally, whether it is ordinances at the city level or county ordinances. And it's very, very important. We want to make sure that when it's in the state interest, when there's a state need, it has to come down from the state. So you have consistency and the same rules for everyone across the state. In environmental issues, for instance, we set certain standards. Local counties can go further. In education, for instance, we set standards and Sunshine State standards, very, very important. So every child gets a good education. But local school boards have a great deal of flexibility. They are allowed to really implement those in the best way that works for their children. So we have to make sure that we set those standards, but give that local control down to the local people. I'm a firm believer in home rule.
Okay. This question comes back starting with Ms. Harrell. The population of Florida continues to grow at a rapid pace. The number of second home purchases is also on the rise. These changes have significant impacts on the state's infrastructure. How will you work to improve and expand infrastructure while maintaining Florida's environment and beauty?
Well, I think you have the economy and you have the environment. And what we have learned here in Florida is that they're tied. They are totally dependent on each other. Our state is a very fragile state. We have so many issues here. We want to make sure as a tourist state that we keep our environment beautiful. Look at the Treasure Coast. My goodness, our waters are our treasure. Our economy depends on that. We have to have the infrastructure to be able to make sure that we can take care of the economy, build the roads and the necessary things you need to do to carry on commerce and to allow people to live and live successfully. So you have to do that balancing act. And it can be difficult, but we are really recognizing the needs of the environment. And we'll talk, I'm sure, about that a little bit more later. But that is a key issue in working together. And this is where we have been very successful in doing a lot of that. There's more to be done. There is no doubt about it. But it's a balancing act between. And I think we have a legislature that realizes that you need to make sure that you are taking care of your environment, and that really helps you build your economy. And the infrastructure of the state is all dependent on that.
Okay, same question to Karina Robinson. How will you work to improve and expand infrastructure while maintaining the state's environment and beauty?
Well, we see the devastation being caused by climate change across Florida. You know, whether it be flooding, the sea level rise, and pollution caused by farming or other industries. Across our district, I remain humbled to help others during reoccurring beach cleanup and feeding the homeless in Fort Pierce. With Sarah's Kitchen, I love her to death. And I just question sometimes why there's a need to hastily build new infrastructure so quickly without having that local buy-in. For example, an expensive toll road to help with broadband service, utility expansion, and other ideals. But, you know, I sense sometimes we could use that same funding for other purposes, such as meeting the needs of our unemployed during this pandemic right now. You know, it wasn't too long ago that I personally worked with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The mayors and the police chiefs, the fire chiefs, we worked through memorandums of agreement. And that was to construct a multi-million-dollar facility as part of the Pentagon reservation in Washington, D.C. It was very complicated, but we found a way to work together, and we understood each other's authorities and capabilities. So it is important to understand the criticality of infrastructure as it's built, how it will impact the community. And of course, we love Florida. We want it to stay beautiful.
Okay, well, along that line, next question to Ms. Robinson. The Indian River Lagoon is one of the most important and delicate estuaries in the nation. Decades of uninformed policies and development have negatively impacted the water quality and the ecosystem. What will you do to protect and improve the Indian River Lagoon now and for the future?
As you mentioned, Carol, Floridians have suffered from decades of uninformed policy and a lack of dedicated funding to protect our estuaries. I am grateful to have earned the environmental endorsements of the Sierra Club and others, and I pledge to preserve the protection of our water. The governor's water proposals related to the blue-green algae task force recommendations are a modest step forward. However, it didn't fully address pollution from septic tanks, wastewater treatment facilities, stormwater, and biosolids. I recall as a commissioned officer in the Army, I was trained and certified to meet environmental standards and was often tested. The consequence of varied violations could have resulted in heavy fines. So as a state senator, I will not simply co-author a bill, but rather lead the complex negotiation to correct shortfalls with dedicated funding. Specifically, Senate Bill 712, the Clean Waterways Act, does not go far enough in cracking down on pollution sources and enforcement of best management practices. So for many years, my family and I, we flocked to Florida to enjoy our timeshare on the eastern coast of Florida. We love to scuba dive, sail, and relax on the beach. We know and respect the most ecologically diverse estuary on the continent, and that deserves the most fullest perspective, regardless of party platforms, regardless of corporations, regardless of people who just are not trying their best to protect our environment. It is worth protecting.
Okay, same question to Ms. Harrell. The Indian River Lagoon is one of the most important and delicate estuaries in the nation. How would you protect it now and in the future?
I am having a problem. I'm not seeing, am I on?
Yeah, we are hearing you. We're not seeing you.
Okay, there I am.
Okay.
Okay. Well, to me, this is a very critical issue. And I have worked diligently over many, many years to really address the problems of the environment here in our beautiful Treasure Coast. As I said earlier, our waters are our treasure. And we have suffered greatly from the releases from Lake Okeechobee. In fact, that's why I worked so hard to pass Legacy Florida, which is actually a game-changing legislation that is putting over $200 million each and every year since I passed that bill into comprehensive Everglades restoration, with priority given to projects to stop the releases from Lake Okeechobee. So far, we put over $1.2 billion. This last year, I worked diligently with the Environmental Appropriations Committee to really up the money that we're putting into this. And I'm so pleased that this year we had an outstanding budget. We put $2.3 billion into our environment, with $318 million going into comprehensive Everglades restoration. And the passage of the Clean Waters Act is significant, I can tell you. And one, especially for the Indian River Lagoon. It is going to put at least $25 million into projects that are going to help restore that incredible estuary. As we all know, it's the most biodiverse estuary in the country. And we really need to work on stormwater runoff, on septic to sewer conversion. It addresses all that. On wastewater treatment, it's absolutely essential. It puts fines, it's increased fines for those who are not doing what they should be doing. And it is a wonderful step forward. And I will continue that work. It is a priority for me.
Okay, next question, starting with Ms. Harrell. What is your position on sensible gun laws, and what kind of gun legislation would you support?
As a firm believer in the Second Amendment, I believe everyone has the right to defend themselves, to own a gun, and to really make sure that they are safe. We passed many laws over the last few years dealing with that. I am a firm believer in the Second Amendment.
Okay, same question to Karina Robinson. What is your position on sensible gun laws, and what kind of gun legislation would you support?
Well, I'm a big believer of the Second Amendment as well. However, I served the majority of my military career as a policewoman and served along numerous local, state, and federal organizations. I've worked alongside counterterrorism teams and directed educational programs around the world in very dangerous places. So it does disappoint me when we have failed our neighbors to the degree where one feels that they have to own and possess a mass casualty weapon. It's not needed to protect one's livelihood if truly we are protecting our communities with the resources that should be doing so. I've used multiple weapons on active duty and know their purpose and the authority that's carefully granted.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question. We'll stay with Ms. Robinson. In your opinion, what state policy changes would be most effective in job creation, and why?
Well, amid this pandemic and a flawed unemployment system in Florida that we're working through, job creation is more important now than ever. We ought to look at green jobs to help better protect our environment. Small businesses should be afforded low interest rate loans and grants to the best extent possible. Even myself, I'm a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business, been in operation for several years here in Florida. And I know it's critical that we receive support through the chambers, some of the more flourishing businesses providing mentorship, and all that is worth legislating for and protecting ourselves from further anxiety or stress in the workplace. I believe raising the minimum wage incrementally will help keep up with the cost of inflation. That's necessary too. I believe in fielding more trade schools, whether it be electricians or carpenters or plumbing or whatever it is. A lot of my family members back home, that's how they made their way through getting certifications and being able to work. And apprenticeship programs are also worth continuing or bolstering here within our district.
Okay, for Ms. Harrell, what state policy changes would be most effective in job creation and why?
I think as a result of COVID, we have had a major crisis in our economy. Up until COVID hit, we had the best economy we've ever had. We had a low job unemployment rate of 3.2%, among the lowest in the country. And then COVID hit. It really has devastated our tourist-based economy. I think what we need to do to move through this and to really grow our economy is to keep taxes low. And I can tell you, I am a firm believer in not increasing taxes. We want to make sure that we keep those taxes low and make sure businesses are able to flourish. We also want to make sure we cut the regulations and the red tape so new businesses can start. And also, I believe that we really need, and I've worked so closely with Indian River State College over many years, to really ramp up how we do our training of our workforce. That is key. In fact, last year, not this past year, year before, I got $4.2 million to go into the Advanced Manufacturing Center that we're going to have at Indian River State College. Got another $1 million this year, but unfortunately because of COVID, all those projects got vetoed. So we didn't get it this year, but I hope to be there next year to continue that fight. We also need to make sure that our school system is the very best it can be. That's how you create jobs, people ready to work, people ready to go on to advanced education. This last year, we put over $500 million into increasing teacher salaries. We want the best teachers in our classrooms teaching those kids so that they have the education, the skills, and the ability to go out and get high-paying jobs.
Okay, we have the same question then to Ms. Robinson. Let's move on. We've already done that. Okay, all right. For Ms. Harrell, Florida has one of the highest rates of uninsured adults in the country. This statistic has only been exacerbated by the record levels of unemployment caused by COVID-19. Would you support Medicaid expansion to cover more citizens? And if not, what would you propose as a solution?
Thank you for that question. And as Chairman of Health Policy in the Florida Senate, I've been very involved in how we really reform and improve our healthcare system in Florida. I do not support Medicaid expansion. I think right now Medicaid is the largest part of our budget. We spent $28 billion this last year. It represents a third of the budget. And when you look at general revenue, part of that is federal, but when you look at what the taxes of citizens in the state of Florida pay, it is 55 cents of every general revenue dollar now goes into Medicaid. Medicaid was never intended to be insurance for everybody. It was intended to be a safety net, and that's where it should be. And I believe in having a very good, strong safety net. That's why I support Hands Clinic. That's why I've done legislation to make sure facilities such as Volunteers in Medicine. My husband was a wonderful volunteer there, and we've put resources into that. We also have a very good system of health departments, as well as federally qualified community health centers, and we fund those through the state. I want to make sure we have that safety net there, and that is a key way. We also need to look at technology, and I passed a bill this last year on telehealth. That's a game changer. It allows people, in fact, during COVID, it's really enabled people to really be able to have a visit with their doctor from their home, and has been a huge help for so many seniors and so many people who could not go to the doctor or were afraid to go to the doctor. In fact, for 7 weeks, they were essentially shut down other than emergencies. So I will really continue to make sure we have that safety net for everyone in the state of Florida who needs it.
Okay, and for Ms. Robinson, would you support Medicaid expansion to cover more citizens? If not, what do you propose?
Yes, I do support Medicaid expansion. The cost rate appears to be higher than long ago when we should have first accepted the funds within Florida. You know, the purpose of Medicaid expansion is really, it's to help people based on their income, their household size, their status, if they have disabilities or not, and it differs between states. But here in Florida, I should have looked up the statistics actually, because it's well known, we suffer from very severe levels of suicide, of drug abuse, and a lot of things that people are struggling to get through. And this expansion would have helped some of those families. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Next question, we'll start with Ms. Robinson. During the last regular session, the Florida House passed a bill that will allow parents to opt their children out of learning certain parts of the curriculum based on religious beliefs and morality. This can include sex education, evolution, events of World War II, and other topics not supported by religious teachings. When it comes before the Senate, will you support this bill? Why or why not?
Well, I'd say it takes a lot of thought at a Senate level to decide on something like that, because you do want to do what's in the best interest of your constituents. And as Senator Hill knows, each of our counties are different. And there are different desires for different communities. But I'd say this is America, and our students deserve to be well-rounded. And we can build resilience through having different venues where they can learn about things that they're not quite exposed to on a day-to-day basis. You know, my sons and I, we were so blessed to travel the world. We moved practically every 2 or 3 years in different countries. We learned a lot about different faiths, ethnicity, and cultures. And I understand that there are concerns with certain topics. You know, I raised 3 boys. And I knew when they were going to get certain classes on different topics, and I never opted out because I wanted them to make their own fair assessment on what they felt comfortable talking about amongst their peers, or when they get out and they graduate high school or college, how is it that they're going to assimilate into a foreign environment? You know, things like sex education, slavery, immigration, wars, and the like, they're not comfortable topics to talk about sometimes. And if the parents aren't educating their children at home, the school may be the only other opportunity they have to learn unique topics like those. And for the parent that is not uncomfortable with such, perhaps they can consider other types of schools, or homeschooling is an option too. You know, I've spent many, many years educating, whether it was in a military college, or it was at Georgetown University, or for the military, or here with Kaiser University. And I so enjoy learning so much from different perspectives and reaching back to better educate our children.
Okay, same question to Ms. Harold. When it comes before the Senate, do you support the opt-out bill? Why or why not?
I'm the parent of 4 wonderful kids, and I have 8 amazing grandchildren. Absolutely. And I'm so delighted we now have 3 of them living here on the Treasure Coast. And I believe that parents have that primary responsibility to look after their children and to make decisions for them when it comes to their education. I believe in parental choice, in making sure that parents have the options to how and where to educate their children. That is a key fundamental right in this country. Parents have that should have that choice, and should be able to determine what those children, if they want to have them opt out of a particular topic. I also support, and COVID was really an eye-opener when we started seeing, you know, whether kids would go back to school, whether they would be in, you know, virtual learning. Parents made those choices, and they had to think about their own situation. They needed to make certain decisions. Do I have an underlying healthcare condition? Am I living with grandma, you know, do I want to make sure my kids don't go to brick and mortar schools? Parents make those choices there, and I trust our parents to make those appropriate choices. And whether it's going to virtual school, homeschool, whether it's going to taking an opportunity scholarship and being able to go to a private school, that needs to be there for parents to make those choices. They are the responsible party for their children. We need parental choice.
Okay, next question starts with Ms. Harrell. In 2018, the citizens of Florida passed Amendment 4, allowing people convicted of certain felonies to register to vote after meeting sentencing guidelines. To date, the amendment has not been fully implemented due to obstructive actions by officials. What will you do to ensure that this and all future amendments passed by the voters are swiftly implemented and accurately implemented?
This last year, we passed a bill that actually does implement Amendment 4 under the provisions as it was written. And when the proposers of Amendment 4 went before the Supreme Court, before it ever got to the ballot, they defined what that would include. And there's really 4 elements to that. It is your sentence, whether you have completed your sentence, including probation. We call it the 4 corners. Whether you have made restitution, whether you have paid your fines, whether you've paid your fees. It's very essential that you look at the entire wording of the amendment in its entirety, not just a little bit that was on the ballot. This has now gone through several court hearings and has been in the federal court, and it held up in the federal court. I believe moving forward, we need to make sure that amendments are very clear, that the League of Women Voters is a wonderful source of information, and I want to thank you for what you do, so that every person, when they walk into that voting booth, they know exactly what it does, and they're not just seeing the ad, the 15-second ad on TV, and determining what it means when they haven't read it. You know, I'm a detail-oriented person. I actually read all the bills and make sure I understand everything that is in it. And I think voters have that responsibility too when you're passing a constitutional amendment, that you really understand what it does. So I would encourage the League to really go out, and I'm so glad you're doing that, informing people, what does that really mean when you go and vote for it?
Okay, same question to Karina Robinson. For Amendment 4 and future amendments that are passed by voters, how would you see that they're implemented accurately?
Well, I'd like to just kind of capture things holistically for a moment. You know, it was practically 2 years ago when the Florida voters approved this hallmark constitutional amendment allowing the felons to vote, returning citizens. The situation at hand, we don't know how many felons are on the voter rolls, owe court fees, fines, or restitution, whether or not they'd be disqualified from voting under a subsequent state law that limited the amendment scope. So it's kind of convoluted in that denying them without having that breadth of information seems wrong. But all that aside, the voters, including myself, when I voted for that amendment, I did not know of the detailed 4 parameters, and I don't think most people did. They just read what was on the ballot, and thankfully the League, and I was one of those people out there educating people on what that meant. I don't think most people knew. But as a state senator, I will be charged with the avid responsibility to serve my constituents in my district and support others and my peers in tackling statewide issues like this. Such work is done to be reflective of the will of the people, not based on party platforms. And our governor and our GOP enablers are not following through on returning citizens' right to vote without paying the poll tax. We all know that our prisons are already overcrowded. A lot of the people incarcerated are there for nonviolent crimes, predominantly minority. And when folks have served their time, they should be welcomed back into the community with open arms as anyone else.
Okay, next question goes to Ms. Robinson. Measures to mitigate the health impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic will have significant impacts on future budgets for the state of Florida and for residents of the state. How will you ensure that the needs of people are adequately met while maintaining a balanced budget with less revenue?
Well, that's definitely going to be a challenge. You know, when I had directed programs at the Pentagon, it wasn't easy because they required, too, a large portion of our national budget. And having to do that during a sequestration and when the government shut down, it was very difficult because people didn't know whether or not they were going to have a job and how long they would be required to stay home. So in the midst of the pandemic, there's still that same fear. How are we going to be able to take care of one another and that the unemployment checks will stop, that people may be removed from their homes through eviction, that the supplemental programs may fall short? So I too don't want to raise taxes. So we need to divert money from other programs, such as this toll road that's being planned, into more necessary programs. And it takes a lot of team effort. Talking to your local communities to fill their needs, to the state level representatives working across the aisle, and with private industry. We all have to look at it from a whole of society concept. Every individual giving their fair share, paying their taxes, to the local, to the federal, to the state level people, helping where they can. It needs to be transparent and it needs to be credible.
Okay, same question to Ms. Harrell. How will you ensure the needs of people are adequately met while maintaining a balanced budget with less revenue?
Well, I think by Constitution, we are required to maintain a balanced budget. And fortunately, Florida is a fiscally conservative state. And we, in good times, we have saved. And we have been very frugal, very careful throughout the years since we came through the worst recession this country has had in, back in 2010, 11, 12, that era. And we learned a lot during that period on how you can really deal with services and make sure you're getting the essential services there to people. But when the good times came, we saved. And as families do as well. So we had about $6 billion set aside in reserves. Reserves are absolutely key. In this last budget, as we saw what was happening with COVID, we actually put aside $50 million immediately for unnecessary things to deal with COVID. And we put $300 million in a special fund to help as COVID moved along. But we have reserves that will carry us to deal with essential services. And fortunately, we have done that. But you also have to look very carefully. Every single agency has to look within their budget. And you have to look and say, can we put off buying those trucks in DOT for another year? Do we really need to do this now? As we rebuild our economy, I am confident, I have extreme confidence in the American people, especially in our Floridians, that we are going to come back stronger than ever and that we will get through this together. In the meantime, we will look and see exactly where we can just put off a few things and not do some of the things that we normally would have done, just like you do in a family.
Okay, well, we have come to the end of our questions, and we're now ready to go on to closing statements. We'll begin with Gail Harrell.
Oh, I get to start. I thought because I started earlier, I just want to thank you all for being here today, for really listening to this, and for the league to do this. I so appreciate it. And Carol, I've done this many years with you. Thank you so much for everything you do. And I am here, please, to ask for your vote. I believe in these critical times when we're facing this economic challenge and everything that COVID has brought on, we need experienced leadership in the Florida Senate. We need someone who knows how to get things done, who has those relationships, who is able to really bring home the bacon and get those projects there. And I have passed major legislation, whether it is environmental legislation, Legacy Florida, whether it is mental health legislation, made major changes in our mental health system. In fact, I'm so pleased, this last year, I was recognized by the American Psychiatric Association as their legislator of the nation for the entire country, for the mental health changes we've made and what we've done in Florida. I'm so proud this year that the PTA actually made me their Legislator of the Year as well for the work I have done on education. So I believe that we need an effective leader, but also we need somebody who understands our community, who has that long-term commitment, who knows our community, knows our problems, and listens, who will be a problem solver and take your needs to Tallahassee and work for you. I would humbly ask for your vote.
Okay, and now for Karina Robinson, your closing statement.
Thank you. You know, several years ago, when I mentioned I left the Pentagon to go run a congressional race, it was during a government shutdown. And that same year, I was working very hard trying to finish my dissertation on legislative decision-making with regard to emergency management. And I just briefly want to read a quick quote from my dissertation. In addition to collaboration and timely decision-making, virtuous leadership fosters change that is both transformative and sustainable. Such leadership can be concerned with moral or organizational matters, and it can help regulate the internal dynamics of an institution or an organization. Most importantly, virtuous leadership requires persistence. So I am unequivocally that leader. I pledge that upon taking the oath for the second time in my life, that I will protect and defend your families without waiver. I'm truly grateful for the numerous endorsements to include Commissioner Nikki Fried, the AFL-CIO, the Democratic Environmental Caucus, the Hispanic Caucus, FLRA, Vote Vets, and so many others. Our grassroots team would love everyone's support, regardless of party, and your volunteerism. There is so much work to do. And most importantly, I am humbly asking for your vote to continue protecting our homeland and its precious people. May God bless you and keep you safe during these unprecedented times.
Thank you. We've met the candidates for Florida State Senate District 25, Gail Harrell and Karina Robinson. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your participation. We certainly thank the League of Women Voters for coming up with the questions, and we thank everyone who has watched and listened to this forum for informing yourselves before the election. So, Andy?
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, candidates, and thank you everyone who stop by to view our forum today. And then for all of you who will view it later on YouTube, we are always excited to have viewers come in and watch our candidates talk to you about the things that matter to you. So we're happy that all of you came to view this evening. And again, thank you to the candidates and of course, Carol, and of course the members of the League of Women Voters for their diligent research on the issues that matter to the voters. I think we're not coming back until Tuesday. I think we're going to take a break for a few days, and then we'll be back on Tuesday at 7 o'clock with County Commissioner and House Rep for District 84. It's our last House Rep race that we're going to do this time. So please join us again next week on Tuesday night at 7 p.m. and we'll be back to do this all over again. And don't forget to vote. Thank you.